I'm back in Scotland at the Edinburgh International Film Festival, and my guests are Sam H. Freeman and Ng Choon Ping, the writers and directors of Femme. Before we dive deeper into your film, why don't you tell our viewers just a few words what the film is about?
Femme is a drag queen revenge thriller. It's the story of a drag queen called Jules. Well, the drag name is Aphrodite Banks. And Jules is the victim of an attack towards the beginning of the film, a homophobic attack, which sort of destroys his sense of self, his confidence. He's unable to go back to drag. And then a few months later, he visits a gay sauna, a bathhouse, and he encounters his attacker there, who doesn't recognize him because he's not in drag. And so Jules decides to insinuate himself into this guy's life in order to take revenge on him and take back power.
I saw your film at the Berlinale last February, where it premiered in the panorama section, and I was quite impressed, I have to say.
Thank you.
Since you also wrote this story, what was the inspiration behind that?
I think the inspiration was how people, men, women, gay, straight, they put on facades to survive in the world that they live in, or the parts of the world or community or culture that they live in. And we became really interested in the idea that everyone is in drag, be it drag queen or drag king, and that led to our interest in this story of how a person stripped of one form of drag puts on another form of drag in order to gain back the power, and also discovering different kinds of power. And the two protagonists, through them we explore the different kinds of drag that they put on, and how they're stripped away, and how it evolves and transforms.
You also did a short film of the same title. Was it always the idea to turn it into a feature film?
Yes.
Turn it into a feature film is not quite. It was so. We pitched the feature. It was a completely different.
The core idea was the same, right?
The core idea of exploring masculinity.
And also doing a queer take on a very butch genre, I suppose, like a very hetero, what we felt was a genre that we both really loved, a kind of neo-noir thriller, but that we felt like we sort of didn't have access to as queer creatives, and that was quite exciting for us. We felt quite passionate. Yeah, it felt subversive.
We felt very like we were storming the Bastille.
Yeah, and that was the I suppose that was really the initial kind of inspiration point. And then we talked to some producers about it, pitching it as a feature. Very different plot. We had this vague plot that was very different to what we ended up doing. And they really loved it, but their thought was, we'd never made film before, no one's going to finance this, like you're not going to get the money. But we like it enough, and we feel kind of excited enough by you guys that we are willing to produce a short film for you.
Yeah.
And so we built this short film really around that idea, and kind of exploring, as you said, ideas of like gender and heterophobia, and made this kind of sort of, we're very inspired by Good Time, the Safdie brothers films. The short film was a real sort of take on that, but with a queer protagonist. One night, very high tension. And which did well. It sort of, I think it did the job of proving that we could make one as a sort of proof of concept. And then when we came back to the feature, we realized that there was this one part of the short, which was this relationship between these two guys that forms in sort of the first half of the short, that just felt really compelling to us and really interesting in terms of exploring kind of gender and masculinity and sexuality, and where those ideas intersect. And so we built a new story around them.
I mean, it was clear to us that we were not going to expand on the short because a story, every story has its proper length, and the plot, the story that we had in that short had finished. So, but we took inspiration, as Sam said, from that relationship that we felt a great heat in the short, and we expanded upon it and turned it into its own story.
Your two main actors, Nathan Stewart Jarrett and George Mackay, are simply amazing. George is quite unrecognizable because I really like when actors are being cast against the grain. So how was the process of casting?
I think that's very exciting for us as well. So that in a way was part of what excited us about George, and I suppose it's that balance of like watching his back catalogue, because we watched a lot of his stuff and had watched a lot of his stuff, and he's definitely an actor who doesn't like to repeat himself. So actually, when you're like, oh wow, you're really transformative. He's always doing something different, and so although it's it was that mix of like we've never seen him do this before, and it feels like quite a sort of out of the box casting choice, and yet when you actually watch him work, you're like, oh, you feel like you can kind of do anything.
I mean, what was consistent throughout his back catalogue, although he's different in every one of them, the one thing that was consistent, that he throws himself fully into each character, and that was what made us feel, yes, we need someone to really throw himself into the character of Preston and Nathan into the character of Jules.
Because he's such a performance himself, Preston.
Yes.
So you need someone who's really gonna make some bold choices with it.
Yeah.
And you could kind of see that with him, that he's very willing to just go there and do it. So that was sort of the process with George.
Yeah. With Nathan.
And then with Nathan.
We knew that we had written a character that had to do everything. A character that was in almost every single scene in the film, and has to go from glamorous, out there drag queen to almost like cold revenge seeker. He needs vulnerability, he also needs hardness, he needs performativity, but also
he's Femme and he's Mask.
Mask. The two worlds in the film, this character has to authentically and persuasively go into and embody. So really, Nathan was really the only person that we saw that could do all these things.
Yeah.
And when you see the final film now, is it exactly what you had in mind in the first place? Or did it change over the course of the development?
It's pretty close.
I think, it is pretty close, isn't it? I think.
Yeah.
Like I mean, once we were making it, like once we were financed and going into prep, we'd worked like we worked really hard on sort of building it from the start, and we discussed everything, we debate everything. And so I think by the time we were going into it, we had a very solid vision of what it was that we want to create. And obviously, in any production, some things have to go, some things don't work in the way that you thought they did, and you have to, you've got to pivot and kill your darlings, we were talking about earlier. But yeah,
I mean, the challenge was to keep to the vision.
Yeah.
Given all the practicalities of the shoot and the prep and the edit. So I think it was pretty much there by the time we finished the short, that this was how it's going to look, this was how it's going to feel. We definitely wanted people to feel like once the film starts, you hardly breathe and all the way to the end. And that was something that we kept to as much as we could.
Yeah.
What are your hopes that people will walk away with after seeing the film?
Questions, feeling that they can't quite decide what they want out of the relationship between the two protagonists, stressed, thrilled. Yeah,
it's a complex mix of things. I suppose we always talked about that we want to make film that makes people feel first, like primarily. It's not film as an intellectual exercise. Like you should feels visceral emotions watching it, hopefully. And then, but also we wanted to probe the subject matter in a way that is complex, that hopefully you come out and maybe you might feel conflicted about what you feel about it, but maybe that opens up conversations, I suppose. Like we didn't want to make a moralistic film where things are very like, this is the good guy, this is the bad, and it's very simple to get behind. We wanted something where you go out and be like, fuck, what did you, sorry, I swore on you. Sorry. We wanted to make a film where people come out and go, like actually want to go, what do you feel, like what do I feel about that? What do you feel about that? What does that, what questions does it bring me about actually, why do these kind of things happen in the world?
We didn't want a film that clearly rewards someone and clearly punishes someone else. It's a reflection of the world where, you have to make difficult choices, and there are many shades of grey.
And you know what? That's exactly what I felt when I left the cinema.
Brilliant.
Fantastic.
Brilliant.
There's one thing I'd like to ask all of my guests. I know that having a budget is mostly good for a film because at some points you have to get creatively challenged. But would you have done anything different if you had, let's say, endless time, unlimited money?
Oh.
Dragons.
I mean, that's a big question. I'm sure there. I think really the thing that you would want is just more time. That's the thing that you're always fighting, right?
Yes.
And then time is money, and but.
Do you know what? The process of making a film with limitations is you must always try to make a virtue out of a necessity. So when we're presented with an obstacle, at least for us, the best creative process is to go, do you know what? We love this. This is precisely what we want, and this is going to give us an even better result. So it's kind of hard, having gone through that process, to think, what else did we want? Because we've kind of like hacked our minds into thinking that was precisely what we wanted.
Yeah, I think there were days where you're getting to this final scene and you've not got enough time because you've got however many days on the schedule and you'd love to have a few more, but actually once you filmed them and you're in the edit, you're like, this scene has a real energy to it because we had to just go, and it adds something. And also there are scenes that we had to make choices to cut on the day because we wanted more time to make sure we had coverage on something really important. And sometimes actually we were in the edit being like, do you know what, we would have cut that scene anyway because we made the right choice, like this can go and this gets priority, but actually maybe we made a leaner film because of it. And so yes, sometimes actually those limitations really end up can be the thing that sort of make it special. Structure is good.
Let's wrap up our conversation with a quick look into the future. What can we expect next?
Ooh. Well, we're just starting to think about that. But I think, we're both big genre lovers. And I think we're both very passionate about, I suppose, trying to take dramatic stories and tell them through genre, if that makes sense, I suppose. Because quite often film, and even when we've been talking about this with people are like, drama or thriller, and we're like, well, it's kind of both. And that's what's interesting for us, that actually we're hopefully taking the kind of character depth and ideas that quite often people associate with sort of drama, but putting it through a genre lens and hopefully using that to accentuate the ideas and the characters. And I think that's probably the thing that we get most excited about, and what we'll continue to do.
Genre is structure, isn't it? And it's about playing with the structure to both twist the genre and through the genre twist the story that we're telling.
Okay. Good luck with the screening tonight.
Thank you very much
for the interview.
No, thank you.